You're listening to the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. Now here's your host, Fran Duffy.
That's right. Of the weekend, the Eagles are on the bye as the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade, continues. I'm Fran Duffy, and I think we've got a great show for you here on episode number 215. At the top of this week's show, we've got Chalk Talk, where I am joined by NFL Film senior producer Greg Cosell to break down what we saw from the Eagles' big win over the visiting Chicago Bears this past Sunday at Lincoln Financial Field. A lot to hash out from this game on both sides of the football. And look, as well, we're going into the bye week. Time to get the state of this roster going in. We obviously got some big news at the end of Monday. We'll talk about that and just about where this team is on both sides of the football as we enter the final 7 games of the regular season. We'll hash all of that out with Greg, so let's not waste any more time. Let's get to our chat now in Chalk Talk.
Let's get down to business. It's time for Chalk Talk.
Well, joining us once again here on Chalk Talk on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade, none other than NFL Film senior producer Greg Cosell. Greg, welcome to Week 10. Welcome to the bye week for the Eagles.
Well, thank you. By the way, Fran, you've really hit the big time. I'm driving over the bridge.
Oh, no. Well, this is.
And you're on the sign. As I'm driving over the bridge, it says... Eagle Eye in the Sky with a picture of you.
Yeah,
I almost crashed my car.
I'm actually surprised that more accidents. Every time I'm stuck in traffic, I'm assuming it's because one of the billboards caused an accident. And I'm stuck.
You're right on the billboard.
Yeah, it's
pretty impressive.
I hear about it pretty regularly.
I'm just honored to be here right now.
Well, I'm glad that the podcast is starting to branch out a little bit more, and the year-round shows have really pitched into that.
I'm just happy to bask in your aura.
I mean, you remember the very first show that we did. Like we did it in the old. What's now, I believe, the recovery room for the Eagles players.
That's right.
Where we used to do it, and it was just a all folding table
I remember
and a blanket
that.
over the table
that.
and a couple stick mics.
I was a young man then.
That's right. I was a little bit younger. All right. Well, let's get into what we saw from this week's game, because obviously a big win for the Eagles going into the bye week. Eagles now undefeated going into the bye under Doug Peterson, 4-0 now with him as head coach. But let's talk about what we saw from the team on both sides of the football, and then kind of as we go, we'll talk about some big picture topics as well, because obviously, look, anytime you go into the bye week, you're always going to have these kind of overarching themes. Where's the team right now? What's the status of the roster on both sides? So you and I both have some stats that we'll kind of allude to. We'll kind of talk about the team from a big picture standpoint, how the team has evolved over the last 9 weeks, and then we'll call it a show here.
All right.
Let's start with the offense. We typically do. Let's start on offense. The big news, obviously, I think we probably should hit this at the top, is that DeSean Jackson is going to have surgery,
right?
And so is going to be out for the foreseeable future. That doesn't change too much, I guess, from what we've seen.
Because I haven't been playing with him.
Exactly. So this doesn't change what we've seen for the last 8 weeks.
Right.
But obviously, look, they were counting on DeSean Jackson being able to come back, and in that first drive yesterday, obviously something did not feel right, and that had to be made.
Right. So I think if you look at what they are, what they've been without him and what they are. Here's what I actually typed out after their first 2 possessions, which were both
great possessions.
I think they were both 12-play drives.
Yeah.
Right. But it was very representative to me as what they are as an offense.
Yep.
Significant snaps of 12 personnel.
Yep.
Focus on the run game and the quick game, pass game with some Wentz boot action thrown in. No explosive ability in the pass game and no attempts to get the ball down the field.
Yep.
It's a limited, condensed offense by design due to lack of weapons and speed at the wide receiver and tight end positions.
Yeah.
That's what they are.
Yep.
If you're being honest, that's what they are.
Yeah.
Now, can you move the ball that way? Sure, they move the ball, but that's what they are.
Yeah, I think when you look at how this roster is constructed at the moment with DeSean Jackson out of the lineup, I think that you have to say, okay, how do you play to our strengths? And that's exactly what the coaches are going to be doing right now this week. Is they're going to say, okay, what do we do to play to our strengths, and how do we continue to hide our weaknesses? What are some of the trends that we're putting on film? How do we counteract that or play to those? So those are the same questions that they're asking themselves.
No question.
But I think when you look at the way that the team is currently constructed, that's the way that they have to play.
It's the only way they can play.
And honestly, it's the way, I went back and forth with some people on social media today. It's the way they played last year for the most part. I mean, they lacked that explosive element a year ago. They counted on Mike Wallace to kind of be that guy. He got hurt very early. I don't believe he registered a catch as an Eagle last year. So I think when you look at how this offense has played over the last couple of years, it's kind of been built that way where, okay, now we have to try and manufacture chunk plays. And they've been able to create, I think if you look at it, just looking at the explosive plays, I mean, they've got 7 touchdown passes of 20-plus yards. That's tied for 4th in the league. They've got there's 20-plus plays, aren't they? It's the 40-plus. It's those big, explosive plays. That element is not what you're going to see in this offense.
Well, and you also, I think, too, and again, I can't remember every one of those in my head right now, but it's how they came about.
Yeah.
You know, that's look, you can look at Ertz's touchdown yesterday, which falls into that category.
No question, 25-yard.
Right, and we know that that's a staple concept that we've seen many times before.
Double post, yep.
It's, double post, close to the boundary.
Yep.
Goddard runs kind of the over route or post, and he clears it out, and they like Ertz even if it's a corner.
Yep.
So we've seen that before, and it obviously worked, and that was good. But I think for the most part, when you look at what they have from a talent perspective, they're not going to create a lot of explosive plays. They're going to have to try because you can't live on 12-play drives week in and week out. It's nice when you get them, and certainly we've now seen Jordan Howard in back-to-back weeks with 23 carries and 19 carries, and he's built for that.
Yeah.
He can do that.
Right. I think when you think of the offenses around the NFL that, coming into the season, we thought, okay, this is kind of how they're built. Seattle, Baltimore, those teams, they have been able to add a little bit of speed over the last couple of years, and so they've got that ability. So that's something that the Eagles, obviously, without DeSean, they don't have that, so they have to find ways to try and mitigate that. Really the 3 players that I think you look at and you say, okay, these are the guys that you kind of rely on to create some of those chunk plays. Miles Sanders, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, they're going to be the guys that are going to be creating the chunk plays in this offense. Nelson Aguilar, of course, as well at times, but those are the 3, especially in the middle of the field.
Yeah, and speaking of Miles Sanders, and we know that he can create, I thought that he continued to show yesterday that he's learning how to run as an NFL back.
The last 2 weeks, he's looked impressively a lot more comfortable and confident as a runner.
Because I thought he had a 5-yard run yesterday, and I made a note of it. It was, I think, on a 2nd and 6 maybe, and he got the ball and he ran for 5 yards.
Yep.
And I thought that was very representative of his growth and development because he showed vision and decisiveness, and he hit it up inside. And
was this the same side, the power run that got them into the low red zone?
No, it was more in the middle of the field. So I definitely made a note of it.
He had a power play that I posted on Twitter earlier tonight, where it was same side shotgun power. He follows the block from Isaac Seumalo, and rather than carry it, playing off the block from Seumalo, there was a safety. Clinton Dix was right there in the hole. He cut back off of that and found a few more yards to work with. I thought that was a good play as well.
The one I'm talking about, I just looked at my notes, was on the second possession. It was a 5-yard run on the second possession, and to me, that shows him growing as a runner because those 5-yard runs mean something, particularly in this offense.
Right, sure.
Because this is an offense where, let's say it's 1st and 10, gaining 5 yards means a lot in an offense like this because it's an offense that's not necessarily going to produce the 35-yard gain.
Sure. Yeah, I think speaking to that point as well, on that 65-yarder last week against Buffalo, I think he gets caught if he hesitates in that hole at all. He trusted the block from Jordan Howard, played off of that, exploded through the hole. He gets caught if he stutter steps at all on that play. Then I thought that the decisiveness, even though that was a wide open hole, it was very well defined. You saw that confidence there, and I thought that was something we hadn't always seen from him early in the season.
And because of that, he looks quicker now.
Yeah, no question. That's the difference between time speed and play speed.
No question.
We're starting to see him play faster.
Decisiveness.
Sure.
You look quicker when you're decisive.
Yep, absolutely. So, all right, well, let's talk about, obviously, I guess one of the big storylines coming out of yesterday was a big day from a production standpoint for Zach Ertz. And look, he's been a focal point of this offense now for years. And I think a lot of people in the media, a lot of the storylines, I don't know how much of it you caught wind with across the river over at NFL Films, but how come, they got to get Zach Ertz more involved? How can they make Ertz more a part of the passing game? I mean, coming in, he was still the very highly targeted player at the tight end position in the NFL.
No question.
And even now, there's a stat that hold on, I got it right here. He's got 74 targets right now on the season. That's more than 27 teams total targets to tight ends.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a big part of what the Eagles are doing in the passing game. And this week, the production just carried out that way. And I was in some clutch situations. No
question. And I think that Wentz looked for him at times. I mean, there was one third down throw where he was actually double teamed, and he actually made a great move to beat Buster Screen to the outside, so he could beat the bracket coverage from the inside.
Yep.
But no, there's no question they designed some things for him. He should have caught another touchdown. It was one of the few times Wentz did not turn it loose. I think it was on the second possession. You know the play I'm speaking about?
Yeah, I feel like he saw Ha there ready to trigger, and that's what kind of caused, because that was the action.
Because he was looking right at him.
It was the first possession.
Was it the first possession?
Yeah, because it was the...
you could be right.
They ran a very similar concept on 4th and 2 earlier in the drive.
First possession, 3rd and goal.
Yeah,
you're right.
so earlier in the drive, it was 4th and 2, and middle of the field, and they ran a very
similar concept.
Wide open, and he hit Ertz for 15.
Yes.
This time, the safety was there, and I feel like he just did.
He could have made it, but again, you'd have to ask Carson Wentz what he saw and why he didn't throw it. It's easy for me with a clicker watching it 10 times to say he should have thrown it.
Right.
I thought he should have, but I'm sure he would have an answer for that. And he got sacked, I believe, on the play.
He took a sack, and then they kicked a field goal. I think.
And by the way, if it's not clean, you're in field goal range, you're better off taking the sack.
That's kind of how I viewed it at the end of the day. Was that, would you like it? Obviously, you'd rather have the touchdown, but if you're going to say, okay, what's the risk reward?
Because it was a quick drop, so on quick drops, you're not scanning the field. So at that point, you're better off taking the sack than, now we've seen him obviously make those special plays where he leaves the pocket, but the pocket closed down pretty quickly. But no, getting back to the point about Ertz, there's no question that they clearly designed some things for him. That play you spoke about, where they were in bunch, and he started out as number 3, I believe, then became number 1, and then broke back inside to be number 2, I think, is the way it played out. It was a really well-designed play.
A great way to beat man coverage, too.
Without question. And I think it was 3rd and 2, so they were pretty certain they would get man coverage. And obviously the touchdown we spoke about a few minutes ago was clearly designed for him. We've seen that concept numerous times.
The tight end throwback on that one drive, I think that was the second possession.
Yes, that was a tight. You're right. So clearly he was a major part of the design of what they wanted to do in the pass game.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think when you look at, we've talked about him in the past. Is he the most dynamic athlete to play in the tight end position in the NFL? No. But he's such a good route runner. I was talking with Ben Fennell about it earlier today, and he just made the comparison like a Jason Witten and why he was so good for so many years.
Sure,
was never the most explosive, the most twitchy athlete, but just always had an ability to be able to uncover and get open for his quarterback.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah,
and then Goddard, I mean, the play that I absolutely loved was that final 3rd and 9 play that sort of wrapped up the game.
So many great elements to that play.
There were so many great elements to that play.
So take us through. So it's 3rd and 9, final drive.
I want to look at my notes because I think I jotted down a bunch of them.
There was a lot going on. So first of all, because we're going to get to this, they did a great job of handling Khalil Mack with a lot of different tactics throughout the course of this day. And I thought that this play showed a lot of those things that we talk about. There's play action, there's misdirection, there's the all kinds of different things. There's the screen game as well. But tell us what you saw here on this play.
These are just, you may have jotted down some other things. I'm just jotting it down as I watch. First of all, they had the Aguilar jet action. And then they had the split flow inside zone run action with Goddard, the split flow player. So it looked like it could be inside zone off the jet action. And then Goddard becomes the screen player off that split flow action. I don't want to say I've never seen that before because I've seen a lot of football, but I couldn't remember seeing that specific thing, the way it was structured and played out.
So
have you seen that before?
I can't remember seeing it, but I'll tell you this. Doug Peterson is going to be on an upcoming episode of Eagles Game Plan and broke down the play. And he said at the snap of the ball, or not right at the snap, but right after the snap, when he saw Leonard Floyd, who Goddard was coming across the quote-unquote block, he said I saw Floyd standing there. I said, oh, man, the play's done. He's gonna read this. And Goddard did such a great job of shucking him upfield that he was able to create that separation and get open for Wentz. Yeah, it was a really
so that was play. That was just, I think, an instinctive move at the time because you're not expecting Floyd to be where he was. But no, I just thought the design of a play that then ended up being a base screen, but how they got to that. And to me, that's what makes a lot of plays so interesting because, as we've discussed many times, there's not 1,000 route concepts. There's not 1,000 plays. It's how you get to the plays that are very interesting, to me anyway.
No question. So I think when you look at both these tight ends, and they're going to be a big part of what the Eagles are doing.
I mean, they've been
a
12 personnel offense for the last 3 weeks it's been? I didn't chart the number of
I haven't charted
snaps,
it either. Yeah,
but it was definitely a meaningful number.
Yeah, especially since Goddard's gotten healthy from that calf.
Yeah.
I mean, he's now a huge part of what they're doing. And honestly, yesterday they relied on him a lot to be one-on-one with Khalil Mack in the run game.
Yeah.
And sometimes it went Mack's way, sometimes it went Goddard's way. But that kind of shows you the faith that they've gotten him at the point of attack and what he's able to do.
Well, Mack really did not impact the game.
Yeah. You didn't hear it. I mean,
no.
Watching the broadcast, you didn't hear his name until the fourth quarter when he batted that one pass down. And that was that. I mean, that was that.
Right.
That was all you heard from him.
Well, and don't forget, a couple of points. 2 points really is the nature of the Eagles' offense and the pass game is going to minimize Mack's impact because a lot of stuff's quick.
Yeah.
Okay. Secondly, it really helps Andre Dillard, who I thought played extremely well, but the nature of the pass game also helps him because he's not being asked to take deep sets and have to pass protect for 3 seconds on deeper drops.
Right. So it's not something where you're going to say, man, like Andre Dillard was outstanding. He did a great job holding up one-on-one against Khalil Mack down after down.
Because they're not running that kind of offense.
He did everything he was asked to do, and he did it well.
He did it well.
And there were some plays. I'll tell you what, the one unsung part of the completion to Miles Sanders on that final drive, that third down check down.
That was a great play, too.
It was a great play, and Andre Dillard did a great job picking up a stunt where he recovered really, really well, and you kind of saw not just the athleticism, but also the awareness and the decisiveness picking up that stunt back outside.
But it was really cool because of the way that Sanders obviously stepped inside, and that's what caught Trevathan, who had a man-to-man.
Yeah, so it looked like, I broke this play down. It looked like it was a four-man slide. He's looking across the formation to make sure 27 McManus doesn't come.
Right.
As soon as McManus drops out, Miles Sanders says, okay, I'm able to chip and release out. He takes a look, makes sure that Trevathan's not coming, and there's that cat and mouse game of the green dog situation.
Trevathan kind of got stuck for a second.
Yeah, because you could tell Trevathan's thinking, okay, is he staying in the block? If he's blocking, I'm going.
Right.
But if he's releasing, I got to get caught. I don't want to get caught. He ended up getting caught, and Carson recognized it great.
Yeah.
It was awesome all the way around. A couple of really key third down conversions. We talked about that third down defense.
Did they have four? I think they had 4 of them on the final drive.
Yeah, they went 8 for 18 on the day.
Yeah, but I think I made a note. Let's see. I thought I made a note. 4 third down conversions on that final field goal drive.
You know what's a crazy stat? They're actually 77.5% on third and short, so third and 4 or less.
They missed one yesterday, though.
They missed one yesterday. Yeah. They've been really, really efficient in those and they're going to need to be. They're going to need to be.
First of all, because of the way they're playing, they're going to need to be.
Yeah, no question. We talked last week a lot about that third down defense with Chicago, and to me that was one of the big, kind of the games within a game in this game is going to be, defeating the man coverage from Chicago, watching out for those pressure packages. I thought the offensive line did a really good job when they were relied on to kind of hold up.
Yep.
Now, they didn't always convert some of those. There were some drops on the back end of some of those passes for Carson Wentz in those situations, but I was really impressed with how the offensive line, the running backs, really good examples of communication between those guys. Jordan Howard had a couple of really nice blocks in protection.
Seems to every week.
He does, and so it's been really good to see both him and Sanders really step up from that standpoint. Let's talk about the receivers, because I think obviously we talked about DeSean. They're going to have to get some better play. Obviously, look, the drops have hurt them throughout the course of the start of the season.
Jeffrey had 3 drops yesterday that were, I think, all on third down.
Yeah, and they were crucial. And he came back and had a couple of big ones.
No question. But see, they don't have that kind of margin for error. Yeah. That's the only issue.
That's it. I think when you talk about, they're going to need to be a ball control offense.
Right.
They're going to need to be able to incrementally move the ball down the field. Ball security, and that talks about fumbles with the quarterback and the running back and drops with the receivers. The ball security has got to be better across the board if they're going to be that kind of offense and be successful with that method.
Because Wentz had one of those plays yesterday where he made that throw where he was getting hit, and I forget, it was a stun, I believe, and I forget who came in and hit him.
It was, I think it was Roy Robertson-Harris.
He kind of lifted him off the ground, and he made the great throw to Jeffrey in the middle, and you got to catch that ball.
Yeah, it was one of those games where I feel like, the Eagles win the game, but obviously it's one of those ones where now the coaches, they still have plenty of things where it's like,
without question.
Lots of things that we have to be able to correct and get straightened up moving forward. But look, I mean, this is talking big picture now. You've got Nelson Aguilar. We kind of know what he is and what he can be for this offense. Alshon Jeffrey. I think you look at some of these young guys, you look at Matt Collins, you look at J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Is he going to be able to find a way to kind of get on the field? He showed some really good things this summer. And I think when you ultimately, there's been a lot of talk in the media about, J.J. and, where's he at with his development and how come he's not on the field. If this wasn't a situation where the guy had shown nothing in the summer, if it was something where like, oh man, we didn't see anything from him. But I was at practice every day, training camp. Guy made some big catches, going up and over guys. He showed the ability to separate. He made plays with the ball in his hands in the summer and in preseason. Made some big plays. That Ravens, I think it was the Ravens game, few big catches.
Right.
Now we just want to see that translate now into the regular season.
Well, sometimes after a bye week, some things change.
Yep.
Look, we know that Matt Collins doesn't get targeted ever, basically.
Yep. Right.
So we'll see if Arcega-Whiteside, when we come back from the bye, starts taking some snaps away.
Yeah.
I mean, he played a few snaps yesterday.
Yep, he did. I've got, to me, I think a lot of people are very quick to say, because they want early results. I mean, you know how the society we live in today. They want early results. They want to see it now. But to me, I always, especially with rookies, how many people wanted to give up on Isaac Seumalo 2 years ago, or I wanted to give up
and
on...
sometimes receivers take time.
I think a lot of... I think we're getting a little spoiled with this rookie class because we've seen guys make some impacts. A lot of receivers around the league. How many did Cincinnati want to give up on Tyler Boyd when he was a rookie, like his as a second-round pick? Now he's making big plays for the Bengals the last couple of years. I think the receiver position typically takes some time. So I'm very anxious, excited to be able to see what JJ can do down the stretch here, if he's able to do anything. And if not, then that's part of the development, and we'll see how it moves moving forward. But certainly, to me, way too early to say, okay, we got to throw it in with it.
Without question.
All right, let's talk about the quarterback. And yesterday, for sure, but then also big picture, what you've seen from Carson Wentz over the first 9 games. I think yesterday he was sharp in the quick game. We talked about that the miss down on the goal line where he didn't throw it. But ultimately, we saw a lot of those completions.
Yeah, he missed one other throw. I thought he one time where Jeffrey got on top of the corner.
Yep.
And he threw
down
it out of bounds.
Down the right sideline.
Yeah,
yep.
threw it out of bounds. Had a shot there.
Yep.
And again, because there's not a big margin for error, those are throws you got to make.
Sure.
But for the most part, I thought he played efficiently within their system. Because that's essentially what the Eagles are now. They're a system offense.
Yeah.
So you're asking Carson Wentz to operate within a system. And I thought he was quick with the ball yesterday, quicker than in some games this year.
He's a very twitchy thrower. Would you say that's fair? Like just how and when he's got to reset and make an awkward throw off an awkward platform, like he's got to. I can think of like him, like Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, like that quick twitch delivery.
Yes.
He had a couple of those yesterday, which were really impressive.
Yeah, and obviously he's got a big arm. He can make every throw. But I thought he played well, and I think, big picture, I think we know what he is.
Yeah.
The question is, how efficient can the overall offense be?
Right.
And how is it going to be structured going forward?
Yeah.
Because I really believe, certainly with the next 2 games after the bye, I'm not so sure that they're going to be able to just do 12, 13, 14 play drives and feel like that's going to win those games.
Yeah, and it's going to come down to execution and play design to be able to say, okay, like how can we orchestrate and create? Because we saw it yesterday where they were able to create a lot of opportunities for those guys, to get guys open. Now you got to be able to do that over a consistent basis, and those guys were able to come through. Run game we've talked about a little bit, but let's just talk about Jordan Howard. And obviously a guy that I tweeted this earlier tonight. If you look up forward lean in the football dictionary, you might see Jordan Howard's headshot. The guy, when he gets going downhill, running behind those pads, there were a couple where he's hit at the line of scrimmage, and it's instead of a 0-yard gain or a 1-yard gain, it's 3 or 4.
Yeah, who hit him yesterday on that one run in the backfield?
Eddie Jackson.
Right.
He came in scot-free on a blitz.
Well, I think he was actually running across the formation
with the jet. Yes,
with the jet action.
Yep, you're right.
And then the ball got snapped.
You're right.
He just. Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what happened on that play.
Yeah.
But he came in scot-clean.
Yeah.
And
hit him with a pretty good shot.
And Jordan ran through it, and it was a 3-yard gain. And there was another one where it was 2. And if you freeze it at one point as he's approaching the line of scrimmage, he got 6 out of this.
Yes. He's that kind of back.
Yeah.
Because he's not a pretty-looking back.
Right.
And you're certainly not going to say he's a top 2 or 3 back in the league in terms of his overall skill set and talent level. But he's a sustaining grinder, and that's what this offense needs.
Yep.
They need a back that can make it 2nd and 4.
Yep.
Because this is not an offense that is going to make up a lot of 2nd and 9s.
Sure. I think that what we've seen from him over the last couple of weeks, and over the last, we'll say 6-7 weeks, has been he provides the Eagles with a tone setter early, and this
Correct.
goes along with the offensive line.
Yeah,
And
the offensive line I thought played well yesterday.
I mean, you talk about some of those double teams.
Yeah.
With Lane, especially with Lane Johnson and Brandon Brooks, it really helping to pave the way for
Was
Jordan.
it the touchdown where
Brooks climbed up to the second level?
And actually, I thought that Lane Johnson did a great job too, because that was meant to be a double, and I think it was Nick Williams actually stepped toward Lane so Brooks could release quicker, but then he got right up on Roquan Smith and did a great job of just washing him right out.
He dismantled Roquan at the second level, and Lane, as you mentioned, did a great job of kind of scooping the three tight.
Williams helped him because Williams
he
took a step toward Lane, but still he did have to turn and seal him. But they just worked really well in tandem on that play.
And the tight ends on that play did a great job as well, getting the two on the backside. Both guys, Zach Ertz, to me, has had probably the best blocking season of his career. I'd love to ask him about that just coming into the year, if that was kind of a point of emphasis, because that was a knock on him, I think, coming in throughout the course of his career.
Right.
Oh, he's a pass catcher, not a blocker. He's shown up in the run game this year. It's been very impressive to watch. But no, I mean the run game, all of yesterday was really, really big. And I mentioned it allows them to set the tone early and then also close games.
Right.
The last 2 weeks, we've seen them have 8-minute drives to wrap up games, put them on ice. They're going to need to have that in the repertoire to win
yesterday's
those
was more
games.
a function of those third down conversions. I mean, they still ran the ball.
Yes, correct.
And obviously they wanted to run the ball.
Yep. Play action was a big thing yesterday, and so I believe the final number was that Carson was 9 of 13 off play action. I'm a big fan of play action, what it can do for quarterbacks. The Eagles are actually sixth most in play action dropbacks so far this year. Tell us why play action could be so favorable to an offense and also to a quarterback.
Well, play action is one of those things you have to define in a little more detail.
Yeah.
Because play action can be used in many different ways. When all's said and done, to me, play action becomes effective when you line up in your base personnel packages, in what you'd consider base formations, run-type formations, because then the defense is reading certain keys that it's a run. And that's, to me, where play action becomes effective. You don't need to run the ball extremely well for play action to be effective, because the defense is not sitting there with calculators during the game, Fran, as you know, and mapping out each run and saying, okay, the back has this many carries for this many yards. That's why it's personnel and formation that very often dictates the success of play action.
Sure. Yeah, and I just love how very often it can just make things so well defined for a quarterback coming in. Even though he does have to turn his back to the defense, he's got to be able to trust what he's got. Before he turns his back and then after he turns his back, knowing that the picture could change, being able to trust
the picture
this
normally
game.
does.
It does change. Yes.
And play action, there's many elements to it. If you're truly looking for a shot play down the field, very often you'll max protect, and it might just be a 2-receiver route.
Yep.
If you run play action out of 3 wide receivers, it could be different. So there's many kinds of play actions, and obviously you can do play action off many different run looks. You can do play action with your quarterback under center. You can do play action with your quarterback in the gun. Play action is the overarching term we use, but it's really a much more detailed, nuanced element of offense.
Sure. Well, it's a lot that you mentioned, with the Max Pro 2-man routes. To me, I was talking to somebody yesterday while watching the game, and they said it was after Mitch Trubisky hit the 53-yarder to Taylor Gabriel, and said, man, he struggled all day, and then he goes and he hits that big play. And I'm like, well, look, they went Max Pro. I mean, that's about, if you're a young quarterback who's struggling to see the field.
On that, as you know.
Well, I mean, but if you're a young quarterback that's struggling to see the field, being able to just drop back off play action, off a 7-step drop, and just grip it and rip it downfield. That's like what you can ask for. To say, like, all right, let me get into a rhythm that way. But all right, let's change gears now. Let's go over to the defensive side and kind of talk big picture. I think one of the interesting things, number one, coming out of this game, I'm not sure how you felt, I can confidently say Fletcher Cox is back.
Yeah, well, it started right at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, I mean, opening drive, first 3 plays, he impacted all 3 plays.
Without question.
That was awesome because we saw that last week and we said, okay, Fletcher looks like he's starting to get. This week against Chicago was like, okay, this is Fletcher Cox.
Yeah.
Which was great. I mean, that to me, I think if there were any people out there that thought like, oh man, like, is he ever going to get back from this injury? Is he starting to hit the tail end? This was the game where I was like, all right, like, check that out.
He played very well.
Yeah, I thought that was a huge sign for this defense.
What I took away from the game yesterday, A couple of things.
Okay.
Number one, I thought that they were truly flying around. I thought that was evident on tape.
Really good energy.
Really good energy.
The D-line had a couple of really impressive high motor plays, chasing
Without
the ball
question.
outside the hash.
And that's part of defense, by the way.
Yeah.
But I thought they did some really interesting things tactically as we start looking ahead.
Take us through.
Number one, I thought different use of personnel. Because what they did, this has been a dime team over the last year or so, but this year their dime has been, and just so people know, dime means 6 defensive backs.
Yep, thank you.
But they've been a 3-corner, 3-safety dime this year. Sendejo has been the dime player. Yesterday, and I think they only did it maybe 6 or 7 times and all on third down, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so.
They played 4-corner dime, bringing in Rasul Douglas. And that allowed them, I think on every one of those, they played cover 1. And they blitzed on, if not all of them, certainly most of them.
Yeah.
But it gave them some matchups that they clearly felt good about because they put Mills on the tight end Burton.
It's a lot of fun to watch this.
Yeah.
Oh,
without question.
Yeah. The first time it happened, I was looking, I was like, is that Mills? Is that Mills?
Yeah.
Not Trey Burton? And I was like, all right, what are we doing here? So I had to rewind, and I was like, all right, let's see how they... And
then Jenkins on Cohen.
Yes.
So it gave them some matchups that they obviously felt comfortable with.
Yeah.
So I really like that because, I think they've played a little more man, and I don't think they played quite as much man in this game as they did the week before, but they still have, I think, without charting it, I think they're playing more man than we were used to seeing earlier in the year.
I think that's probably fair to say, yeah.
The other thing I really liked what they did up front, because for the most part, what we've seen under Jim Schwartz, and because it's been successful, is he lines up and lets his guys rush the quarterback. There's an occasional stunt here and there, but for the most part, they line up and rush the quarterback. And when you had Fletcher Cox over the last couple of years playing at a high level, when you had guys playing at a high level, they were able to generate some reasonably consistent pressure on quarterbacks.
Sure.
We know that hasn't quite been the case this year. So now what do you do about it? Well, I thought he did some really good things yesterday. And one thing that I love is when you line up 3 defensive linemen to one side of the offensive center. I'm not sure what to call that. I never knew a name for that, but it's 3 offensive linemen to one side of the center.
I've been going with tilted fronts.
Okay.
Meaning the front is tilted heavily towards one side.
Right. Yeah. Now, 95% of the time, you're going to get some kind of stun with that.
Yes.
And what they did yesterday that was really effective, and they did it multiple times, was they did what we call a long stick or a long stun, where they took the defensive end and he looped behind the other 2 guys.
Yep. And
he looped into the A gap. And it was successful. I don't want to say every time, but it was successful. And they did a couple of cool things too, because they did this out of dime, and they would have Nate Gary up on the line of scrimmage, and he would show that he was coming, and then he'd back out. And then it looked like Jenkins might be coming, but no, he had the back. So they just did some interesting things that were a little different from what we've seen. And I just think going forward, they need to do these kinds of things to continue to generate pressure, particularly when they come back and play a Tom Brady.
Yep.
Now, when you play Russell Wilson the week after that, that's a little different animal because of his ability to move around.
Yep.
Although Trubisky, while he's not Russell Wilson does have movement ability. But against a Tom Brady who's in the pocket, I think you're going to need to see some of these kinds of tactics to try to create pressure, particularly inside, because the looper was hitting the A-gap.
So one of the things that I love about what you said was, the use of Nate Gary or Malcolm Jenkins up there, because, I've watched a lot of the sacks just around the NFL, just watching how teams are able to get pressure on the quarterback. And one of the things you'll see from these tilted fronts is that a lot of teams will try and go, and to me, it should almost always be an automatic, we're going to go 4-man slide that way to just account for anything that if you're going to send games out.
But the defense knows all those kinds of things too, so you have to be careful as an offense about being predictable.
And that's why I think that the use of a guy like Gary, the use of a guy like Malcolm up close to the line of scrimmage, that prevents you from saying we're going to go full 4-man slide that way, because you have to account for that guy up on the line of scrimmage. So now you're saying, okay, we've got 3 versus 3 over here. That one versus with Barnett, where Barnett comes clean into the A-gap.
That might have been the first one.
That was the first one.
Yes.
Barnett came in clean. The center, James Daniels, did not see him coming from distance, and he gets home to Trubisky.
Well, that's because Fletcher Cox was the one technique player there. And when Fletcher Cox is right there, you can't just leave him alone.
Yeah, and so Barnett comes in clean. Trubisky gets out of that, but he steps into Josh Sweat sack.
Right. That was the first one.
That was the first one.
Barnett actually was responsible for it, even though he didn't get the stat.
Right, and then the next one that we saw that turned into a sack was from Jannard Avery. It was actually his first snap as an Eagle. He lines up outside, and he was
almost a wide 9 player.
Yeah.
Right next to, was it Barnett?
I think it was Barnett
or Graham.
I think it was Barnett and Graham or Barnett and Sweat.
Right.
But either way, it was the 3 DNs.
And Avery. And see, what I loved about that particular play, Avery got the half sack, but that's a perfect example because the back had to add in the protection, Jenkins green dog.
Yep.
Because Jenkins had the back go and the back stayed in to protect. Jenkins added into the pressure, and there was no one to block him.
Yeah.
So it was beautiful.
And that one was a little bit different from the previous two because they actually slid the protection the opposite way to account for Fletcher Cox, who had been manhandling their guys all game long.
Because they were keeping the back on that side.
Exactly.
No, so there's many. Protection is one of those things I try to learn more and more every year about protections, because protections are one of those things that there's many different. Some might say, gee, there's not a lot of ways, but to me, there's a lot of ways, and I just try to keep learning more.
Yeah, it's something I've been trying to spend a little bit more time on the last couple of years, and that's why I've been watching, honestly, a lot of the pressures from around the league, just kind of get a sense of how teams are attacking them. And this one was really fun to watch. Just certainly one of the big takeaways in this game, and the use of Jannard Avery, not just on that play, but multiple
He's a pretty
times.
Explosive kid now.
Very explosive kid. You talked about him last week.
He's like a fire plug because he's not tall.
Yeah.
But he's explosive.
A few times they lined him up, and pre-snap he lined up stacked next to Nate Gary, and then
he didn't play that many snaps.
He only played a handful, but a couple he lined up stacked next to Gary, and then late would just creep up and he'd play as an A-gap player. He had a nice run stop where he beat the guard real quickly. I mean, he had a couple of really nice plays.
But I think the overriding point is I think they need to do more of these kinds of things.
Yep.
Because they need to create pressure.
Sure.
And I think they have athletes who are capable of doing this.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun watching this group, I think, down the stretch. And the pass rush had come into a lot of fire early in the season, and I think watching this group kind of come alive is going to be a lot of fun because these guys, it's a young group.
I'll tell you one thing that stood out to me, and I know that Bradham's going to be back, and that probably takes Edwards out of the mix. But I think he's kind of fun to watch, the way he blocks aggressively with physicality.
That's what he was at Wisconsin.
Now, obviously, he was an undrafted player, so no one, he's not a great athlete.
Yep.
But he's just a fun guy to watch.
Yeah.
When Bradham gets back, I'm sure he's the guy that sits, but I just enjoy watching the kid. And actually, in the next 2 teams they play after the bye, these are 2 teams that play with a lot of base personnel on offense.
I think the last few weeks we've seen a lot of base, and we're going to continue to see a lot of base.
Certainly with New England and Seattle, you absolutely will.
And even, the Giants, they're going to try and keep him in base. Dallas tried to keep him in base. So moving forward, I don't know how Miami's playing yet. I haven't watched them schematically, but are they trying to? Is O'Connell doing a lot of the same things with them that they did in New England?
Truth be told, I haven't seen a ton of Miami.
I'll hold you to that in a few weeks.
Right.
But I think ultimately, when you look at Edwards, he's been a bright spot for sure.
I would agree.
Yeah. Let's talk about the secondary a little bit. You mentioned what they did from a dime personnel standpoint. We saw the pass break up by Jalen Mills down the field. We saw a play by Avonte Maddox.
I like Avonte Maddox.
Yeah, we saw the play by Ronald Darby last week on 4th down against the Bills. To me, I kind of look at this team and I say, all right, you get Jalen Mills back, you get Darby back, you get Maddox back. We're getting Nigel Bradham back soon. You get Tim Jernigan back yesterday.
Yes.
You got add in a Jannard Avery. Fletcher Cox is back, rounding back into form.
You know who I thought showed up too, flashed on a few snaps, was Rush.
He did. I have an edit that's going to go out Tuesday. That's got a set of plays that'll go out.
Yeah.
He disrupted some plays.
Yeah, he did.
This is a defense that's rounding into form at a stretch again where you're going to need that defense.
And again, they're playing a little more man. They're mixing things up. They got back to playing that, and I studied it carefully today. I think it's 3 robber. I don't think it's 2, but they played more snaps of that.
Yep. That's they gave up the big play on that, but they provided a bunch of other times in the game. And, the coverage. I think a lot of people are quick to crush the coverage. Obviously, there are reasons why it works, and otherwise they wouldn't run it. If it only gave up big plays, they wouldn't be running the coverage. You saw some good things from that coverage as well throughout the course of the game. It's going to be fun. I think it's going to look, the DeSean Jackson news is obviously tough.
You know what? I was almost prepared for that, though, to be honest with you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think just kind of coming into today, you didn't know what to expect. But I think ultimately, this is a team, there's a lot of really interesting things that are going to be a lot of fun to watch down the stretch here as they look to make a playoff run.
And defense is going to be critical here because barring special teams plays or turnovers, which come from defense, my sense is we're not going to see an offense put up 35 points on a weekly basis.
To me, this is the point I made in the post-game show yesterday with Amy Campbell and with Ike Reese. I said, ultimately, when the weather gets cold, when it's November and December, there are a few things that I think you look at and you say, okay, these are what you want to rely on. If you're an NFL team,
and
you
run
say,
game is one of them.
Run game, defense. Which if you're the defense running form, you got that. Reliable quarterback play and a good coaching staff.
Right.
And I think when you look at Doug Peterson and Jim Schwartz on that side, that's a proven duo. You look at Carson Wentz, we know what he can be. This run game has been really, really strong. And the defense, like we've talked about over the last 10, 15 minutes, starting to kind of round into form. Well, that's a formula. That's something
we'll find out real quick because they're going to get 2 major tests as soon as they get back from the bye.
Yeah, 2 major tests coming after the bye. And then after that, a bunch of games you're hoping you feel pretty good about going down the stretch. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to watch. We're fun to watch. We're excited to break it down with you over the next couple of months here, Greg. Appreciate the time here, as always, on Chalk Talk on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade. We will talk to you here next week.
All right, Fran.
Great stuff from Greg, and you can follow him on Twitter just like I do, at Greg Cosell. And while you're at it, I'm at FDuffy3. That's where I post all the podcasts I'm a part of and all of our X's and O's content that we produce over at PhiladelphiaEagles.com. And you know how much I appreciate everybody that promotes this podcast on all forms of social media. That is one way to support the show. But the other way, the best way, some would say, is to go onto Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, wherever you listen, leave us a rating and leave us a comment. I want to give a shout out to a few people who did exactly that over the last couple of weeks. T Frost 316 left a 5-star review and said, "Fly Eagles fly." Mr. Scorsese left a 5-star review saying how much they learn each and every week from the podcast and have learned to become a much better fan in the process. Andy from Connecticut, the final one for today, 5-star review saying how much they learn every single time they listen to the show. So thank you to all 3 of you for leaving your responses. And look, everybody out there, if you want to just give us a little bit of support, just go into Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. And again, just leave us a rating and leave us a comment. It's a great way to help promote the podcast, make it available to other people that are looking for similar kinds of content. Because even if you're not an Eagles fan, I feel like you could still glean a little bit from our conversations here, whether it's with Greg during the season or with other analysts from around the country, around the globe during the offseason. Really appreciate everybody that gets a chance to go and do that. But I think that'll do it. Another show in the books here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. We will talk to you next week. We got a big matchup to preview, Eagles-Patriots here in Week 11. We will get to that next week here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade.